Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Jordan Rutter, Director of Communications at American Bird Conservancy. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you afterward. We'll be putting links in the chat, but in case you missed them or can't copy them down fast enough, please know that everything can be found in a follow-up email we'll send to registrants, and that info is always available on our website. Please submit any questions you have during registration using the Q&A box so we can track them better. Automated captions are available for this webinar, and you can turn them on by clicking on the CC icon. Before we begin, I want to share some background about American Bird Conservancy, shortened to ABC, which was founded in 1994 with the mission of protecting wild birds and their habitats across the Americas. We continue that work today following a conservation strategy outlined by the pyramid featured on the current slide. Our work strives to help keep common birds common and prevent the rare species from going extinct. And bird conservation works. Species and groups of birds have rebounded in the past decades, but there's so much more to do, and American Bird Conservancy needs your help to do it. ABC's work is made possible thanks to people like you who care about birds and our planet. Today, as you learn about how ABC is conserving bird habitats and combating threats to bird populations throughout the Western Hemisphere, please consider becoming an ABC member or making an additional gift to support these critical efforts. Thanks to generous ABC supporter Carol Stein, gifts made during this week in honor of Earth Day and Arbor Day will be doubled up to $50,000. Plus, ABC will plant 2 trees in bird habitat for every gift of $20 or more, and gifts of $100 or more contribute to the conservation of an acre of bird habitat. We're so close to meeting our goal, and we hope that you'll contribute to an Arbor Day gift to ABC and be the one that pushes us over that goal. Please visit abcbirds.org/Arbor Day or scan the code on today's slide with your phone to make a gift. Thank you so much for caring about birds, and a special thank you to all of our ABC members and donors in the audience right now. You're making a difference for wild birds and their habitats every single day. Also, happy spring migration! It's finally here in the US and Canada. Warblers, orioles, grosbeaks, buntings, and more beloved migratory birds are all returning for the breeding season. It's my favorite time of year. For me, and maybe for you, their beautiful colors and charming songs definitely make being inside at a computer right now a challenge. But billions of birds, yes, billions with a B, are on the move and likely passing through your community. And if you're so lucky, potentially settling down to nest for the season right in your own backyard. With birds undertaking such incredible feats, such as flying hundreds or even thousands of miles, it's no surprise that they face a gauntlet of threats along the way, including the #1 threat to birds, habitat loss. Just like humans on a road trip, birds need safe places to rest and refuel to ensure they can complete their journeys and arrive safe and sound. We can all do our part, all seasons as they travel and raise their chicks. Together, we can bring habitat back, whether that's through restoration and reforestation efforts on a landscape scale or improving habitat in our backyards and communities. Today, you're going to learn about ways to take action and help the birds that we love. I'm so pleased and excited to introduce you to 3 of my ABC colleagues that will be presenting today. So let's meet them. First up, we have David Wiedenfeld, who is ABC's Senior Conservation Scientist. David received his PhD from Florida State University. His work has focused on bird population ecology and conservation biology. He served for 5 years as Director of Research at the Sutton Avian Research Center, working primarily on prairie chickens. He was also head of the Department of Vertebrate Ecology at the Charles Darwin Research Station in the Galapagos Islands. We also have Kaitlyn Parkins, who is ABC's Glass Collision Program Coordinator. Kaitlyn has been working in wildlife conservation since 2008, holding research positions studying native plants, pollinators, migratory birds, and bats. As a member of the collisions team at ABC, she focuses on addressing bird window collisions through education, outreach, glass testing, and policy solutions. Kaitlyn holds a Master's of Science in Biology and an Advanced Certificate in Conservation Biology from Fordham University and a Bachelor's in Biology and Psychology from McDaniel College. And last but not least, we have Joanna Eckles, who is ABC's Bird City Network Coordinator. She received her bachelor's degree in wildlife science at Cornell University and her master's degree in conservation biology at the University of Minnesota. She works with partners across the hemisphere to help communities increase habitat, reduce threats, and engage people in birding and conservation. And with that, I'll turn it over to David to kick things off.
Yes, good afternoon. Um, let's see, I have to share my screen here. And I hope everyone is seeing.
You're all set. Take it away.
Yeah, as Jordan said, this is beginning of migration season, and lots of birds are busily working their way northwards. Billions of them, and for most of them are coming from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean northward to the US and Canada. But some also come from, especially northern South America, but some come from quite far south, as far as Argentina. Some of our shorebirds come from all the way down to the southern tip of South America. And they come headed north by various routes. Some of the birds that head to the eastern U.S. skip across the Caribbean, hopping from island to island and into Florida and up the coast. A lot of birds for the central and eastern U.S. Come up through Central America and Yucatan and then make that long flight across the Gulf of Mexico to Texas and Louisiana and into the U.S. And some birds go around the Gulf of Mexico overland, or especially birds headed to the western part go up along the overland all the way up in as far as Alaska and to northern Canada. We don't see this very much because most of these birds are traveling at night. They seem to appear early in the morning. You may suddenly discover one morning that you have a very noisy house wren suddenly is in your neighborhood that wasn't there the day before. And that's likely because he flew in overnight. So it's happening even though we don't often get to see it very well. So what are these birds looking for, and what do they need when they first start arriving on their breeding grounds? Well, they need a place to rest. That should be fairly obvious. So shrubs, trees, habitat. The habitat is that they prefer is what they're looking for. And food to refuel. This is an example of a Western tanager at an orange feeder, which is a good source of energy for a newly arrived bird. But habitat also usually provides some of their best food resources, especially insects and in some cases fruits and seeds. Nature provides the best resources. Natural habitat is the best. If you can keep your yard or your surroundings in as natural a state as possible, that's the best possibility. Native plants, always important. A variety of structure is important to most birds. By that I mean difference between you can have a lawn, but also some flowers and low shrubs, trees, tall trees, or brush piles, providing them a different variety of types of habitat that provide places for security, but also possibilities for food. Water is often very important for newly arrived migrants. It can be natural water, or it can be an artificial water feature or a bird bath. Feeders are also okay, but always remember to keep them clean. Keeping them, I try to get mine cleaned about every other week to make sure that it doesn't become a place for spreading diseases. The important part about your habitat that you're providing is make sure it's safe. I'm not going to say a lot about that on this point. We're going to actually talk about some of that with some of the other presentations, but that's also a very important part. Um, so one thing you can also provide for birds is some additional resources. Of course, a lot of birds don't like birdhouses. Things like most of our warblers and finches and so forth. They really like to build their own nests. So providing good trees and shrubs and places for them is all that's necessary. But you can also provide bird houses that are useful for some migrants. This is another example of a house wren, one of the migrants that loves to take over houses. Platforms are also used by some birds. Platform being just a horizontal board, for example, placed often up under the eaves that eastern phoebes, for example, like to use those, or swallows. There are also baskets that can be used. So these are sort of a more open structure that you can attach to your house or some other places that birds like wrens, Carolina wrens are a good example, one that really likes those, or finches. If you're trying to get these birds to use it, you have to put it up in the right kind of place and the right size and type of box. We'll provide some information, but there's a lot of sources on the internet that will give you box designs for wren boxes and bluebird boxes, and even up to owl boxes, and can also provide information on best placement, how high, what kinds of surroundings. One thing, if you have boxes up from previous years, make sure that they're clean and ready. So this migration and nesting season goes by in what seems like a flash always. Migration, the peak of migration moved like a wave shifting northward over about 5 weeks. So yeah, some birds have already started migrating. We get our earliest migrants in the U.S. In February, and some of the very early ones that are arriving in Canada quite soon in March as well. Uh, but the peak of the migration is starting about now along the Gulf Coast, and it will move north over the next few weeks, reaching the northern U.S. and southern Canada by mid-May. It won't reach the farthest north until later May and even the first days of June. But it's a peak, rapidly moving birds headed north. And some of these birds that are arriving and passing through as they go need to rebuild their resources. So some birds that we call passage migrants are ones that maybe appear in your neighborhood and then later move on northward, but they need to rebuild their resources as they move. Once again, having natural habitat, lots of good natural food sources is an important thing for these birds. Of course, some of them stay to raise their families. They also need good food supplies to rebuild their resources. So nesting goes by also very quickly. A single nesting for most of our songbirds is only about 4 weeks. Nest building takes a day or two, then incubation up to about 2 weeks, then nestlings period for about 2 weeks. And that's really only about 4 weeks. Once they're out of the nest, of course, the parents usually will provide food for another couple of weeks. But for birds that do more than one nesting in a season, they often will overlap and begin a second nest, building the nest, laying eggs, and incubation, while one parent continues to feed the fledglings, the other one is getting started. So an entire 2 rounds of nesting often takes place between mid-May and mid-July, a period of just 2 months. A lot of birds can get two nests. Most of our nesting occurs in that period, a very, very short period. So you can help make nesting a success for the birds that are in your neighborhood, in your yard. One thing is important is to avoid disturbance. So if you know of a nest, and it's in a shrub, if you can avoid sort of mowing or yard work close to it, if it's near your door, if you can kind of reduce the amount of time you spend going in and out, that always helps. Uh, keep pets away. That's often an important thing that can help birds. And another thing that happens is we often find baby birds that are out of the nest, and this often is normal. Recent fledglings are often are not fully feathered and don't fly well. But this is normal. The parents know that the young bird where the young birds are, and they'll continue to feed them. They keep track of all of their young, and even a family of 5 or 6 fledglings in different bushes around a yard. The parents will know where each one is, and they'll come and feed each one, often in turn, because they're keeping track of them. So it's best to just let them know where the birds are and try to keep your pets away. So just a quick summary. Natural habitats are best. They provide the most, and you can help out birds, providing them with resources, nest boxes, and making sure they're safe. So that's some of the great things you can do for birds.
Thanks so much, David. It's incredible how much habitat is all around us and what we can do to help birds in our areas, especially if it's right outside of where you live. But we have to be responsible with that. And Kaitlyn's going to help tell us more about some of those threats and what we can do. So Kaitlyn, you are all set up. Take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. I am here to talk about window collisions. Bird window collisions are actually the second largest direct cause of bird mortality in the United States every year, and that's second only to free-roaming cats. So window collisions actually kill over 1 billion birds a year in the US alone, and there have been some recent studies showing that that number might actually be much higher than we originally thought it was. So a little bit of background on window collisions. We often notice bird collisions more during migration because songbirds that are migrating through are some of the most likely birds to hit windows. And we really see these peaks in collisions around migration. But winter collisions also occur, especially if you have a feeder at your home, and collisions can also occur all summer, especially fledgling birds. And so if you're doing those things that David mentioned to help make your home safer for birds, or to make your home more attractive to birds, it's also really important to make it safe for birds. A lot of folks say, oh yeah, 1 or 2 birds hit my window and more hit, but they fly away and they're okay. Unfortunately, many of the birds that hit windows might initially fly away. Some recent studies have shown that actually only 10%, as few as 10% of window collisions actually result in a stunned or injured bird at the base of the window. So all those other birds might fly away, but often they have injuries that are lethal later on. So it's really important that we prevent window collisions in the first place and recognize that this is actually taking a much greater toll on birds than we might think it is. So birds don't hit glass because they're stupid, which is something I've heard, a myth that I have heard a lot in my career. Humans can't really see glass either. What we do is use architectural cues like door handles or window mullions to kind of know where to expect glass. And you might have run into a glass door yourself. If you take away those cues and you aren't expecting glass to be in front of you, you might walk right into it. And for humans, luckily, usually just our egos are hurt. But for birds, when that happens, it's often lethal. Birds don't recognize those cues. They don't know what a door handle is. They don't know what a window frame or a window mullion is. And they take things very literally. So the reflection of habitat in glass, like is shown in this picture, that's habitat to birds. Vegetation behind glass. So if you see an atrium planted with trees inside, it's really pleasing to us, but to birds, that's habitat. Sky through a skywalk is also habitat to birds. And so they will go and try to fly to that habitat, and there's a glass solid barrier between them and it, and they can really injure themselves when they hit that glass. There's a tendency to associate collisions with tall skyscrapers because every once in a while, usually once a migration season, we hear of these big collision events where lots of birds are moving through, and often there's a low cloud ceiling that brings them down closer to buildings, and a ton of birds will hit a single building. But if we look at the numbers overall, we'll find that actually less than 1% of all collisions take place at buildings 12 stories or higher. And even at these buildings, birds are mostly colliding at the lower levels where the tree canopy is. This is where they're most active. Think about how car accidents are most likely to happen closer to home. Well, that's just because that's where you're driving all the time. The same goes for birds. The majority of collisions happen at mid-rise buildings, 4 to 11 stories, but 44% of all collisions take place at residences, only 1 to 3 stories. And that means your home matters. And making windows safer for birds has actually been identified as one of the 7 simple actions that we can all take to help birds and help birds that are in population declines. So how do we do that? So I'm going to go through some of the rules for deterring birds from hitting your windows, and then I'm going to show you a bunch of product options as well. So there's a couple of rules. A single hawk decal is not going to prevent collisions. One, birds don't actually think that that's a hawk, or maybe if they do for a second, they quickly learn, oh, that's not a real predator. I don't have to avoid that area. The same way they eventually realize that the plastic owl that you put out is not a real owl, and you'll even see birds sitting on top of them. So they're not going to be scared by it, and they're just going to think that they can go around it to either side. So they might avoid the hawk, but if there's just one in the middle of the window, they're not going to avoid the entire window, and they might just hit to the left or right or above or below it. So a couple of rules that we can follow is by using things on our windows to create a pattern that birds don't think they can fit between. So it needs to be on the exterior of the windows, or I guess whatever you put on your windows, you want to make sure it's on the exterior. If you can imagine, there's reflection on the outside of your windows that birds are seeing. And so if you put your product on the inside of the windows, it's actually not going to break up that reflection, and birds aren't going to be able to see it. So it's got to go on the outside. Small things actually work really well. Lines can be as small as 1/8 of an inch, and dots can be as small as 1/4 of an inch. So you don't need huge decals on the outside of your windows. They can be as small as 1/4 of an inch in size. And spacing is really important. So the most important thing is your spacing. Birds are tiny. They can fit through tiny spaces. They're very agile. And so your pattern, your product, whatever you put on the outside needs to be close enough together that birds don't think that they can fit in the spaces in between. So what we see as a product in a pattern, birds are really looking at those spaces and they're like, whoa, that's too cluttered. I can't fit in that tiny space. I'm not going to go there. And they're going to avoid your window. And so the rule is 2 by by 2 inches. We want to make it as safe as we can for the smallest birds, like hummingbirds, and that'll make it safe for all the birds that are bigger. So we have to remember it goes on the exterior, 1/8 inch lines or 1/4 inch dots or odd shapes that fit those rules, and 2 by 2 inch spacing. So here's some options. Exterior insect screens are very bird friendly. They totally cut that reflection and birds recognize them as a solid barrier. If you want a simple, quick solution, you can go to a craft store and buy some tempera paint or an acrylic paint marker and just draw on the outside of your windows. There's also stencils you can buy that you can just paint the stencil and roll it right on if your artistic capabilities like mine are not great. So this is a really easy solution, and I also recommend it for places like schools where you can have kids draw murals. You can wash it off and redo it and try all kinds of new things. It's not permanent, so you will have to redo it every once in a while, but this is a very inexpensive and easy solution. Decals are another solution, and this is probably what you'll find mostly if you type into a Google search, bird window collision deterrent, or if you go to a local bird specialty store, you'll find these decals for sale. And these decals can be really effective, but you must put them on the outside of your window, and you've got to get the spacing very close. So these two pictures show you what that spacing really needs to look like. And for these big decals, that means you've got to put a lot of them on your window. And they're actually bigger than they need to be. So what I recommend is cutting these decals up into smaller pieces and spreading those out across your window in a 2 by 2 pattern. And then you're not losing as much as of your view, and it's still just as effective. Another option is tape. You can use specialty tape that's made for this purpose, like ABC bird tape, or you can use chart tape, masking tape. All kinds of tapes will work as long as you follow those rules about the 1/8 inch lines and you space them 2 inches apart. And here's 2 examples of what that can look like. On the right, you can see there's a combination of decals and stripes, which make a really cool pattern on those doors. Acopian bird savers are another option, and this is actually the one exception to the 2 by 2 rule. Acopian bird savers are parachute cords spaced 4 inches apart and hung in front of your window. You can order them from their website, or you can DIY your own. They can be stuck above the window with little Velcro adhesive strips, and so they're really easy to put up. You can also put them up when you want and take them down very easily, and they look really nice. I think they look really cool, and they're super effective. There's also lots of different window films. On the left, we have a product called Feather Friendly. This is actually not a full film, but you put it on like a film and you pull it off and it leaves dots on your windows in the right spacing and the right size pattern. I really like this option, and when you're in the inside looking out, those dots kind of just fade away after a couple days and you really don't notice them. There's also options for full films that have stripes on it, like the picture on the right here. So these are just a couple of the options available, and we have far more on our website, so please check it out. Remember, you can get really creative if you put it on the exterior of windows and you follow that 2 by 2 inch spacing rule. And I think they're going to put a link in the chat to our website where you can browse all the different options and find one that works best for you in your home. Another thing you can do to help birds, and it's related to collisions, is turning your lights out at night. Light attracts and disorients birds. On the left, you can see the 9/11 tribute in light. Every single one of those little dots is an individual migratory bird that has been attracted in by the light, and they get trapped in that light. These bright exterior lights draw birds in, can trap them. They end up exhausted. They can collide with windows or end up landing on the ground. And these are often the cause of some of those big migration collision events. But also just the overall sky glow attracts birds in. So scientists have actually found that there are more birds in urban areas stopping over during migration than in darker, unlit rural areas. So our lights are actually drawing birds in. And of course, once they stop to rest and refuel in these places, they're in a total maze of reflective glass, and they're at risk of collisions the next day. Light also affects other wildlife. It affects reptiles, it affects plants, it affects insects, which our birds rely on. And so turning our lights off at night is a simple step for birds and for wildlife and for humans. We recommend following the dark sky principles of lighting, that it's useful, it's targeted, it's low level, it's controlled, so it's only when it's needed, and warm colored light. And so these principles can be followed. Turning your lights off at night, both inside and outside, is great for all wildlife, including birds. So beyond your own home, you can help in your community. And I'm just going to touch on this a little bit because Joanna is going to take it and talk about this in much more detail. But you can help advocate for buildings in your community that are known bird killers to put solutions in place. You can also advocate for new buildings that you know are going to be constructed in your community to be bird friendly. And ABC is here to help. We have lots of resources on our website about how to do these things. And we're also here to support you, be it meeting with an architect of a building to talk to them about bird-friendly design, or testifying in support of local legislation. We are absolutely here to help you with these. And speaking of legislation, bird-friendly policy is really the best way to prevent collisions at a large scale. It can be very time-consuming working building by building. And so by passing policies that require new buildings to use bird-friendly materials, we can kind of stop new bird killing buildings from being built while we work on those existing buildings. You can do this at the municipal level. 25 municipalities, states, and cities have passed mandatory bird-friendly ordinances so far. There's a list of them on the right, but you can also work with agencies, say your local parks department, to make sure that any new buildings they build will be bird-friendly, or an organization like a college. We've had great success with colleges implementing bird-friendly building policies. And so with that, I hope you learned a little bit and that you can help prevent window collisions at your home and in your community. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions later on.
Thanks so much, Kaitlyn. Sometimes bringing habitat back can seem so overwhelming, but I so appreciate how many different options and solutions Kaitlyn presented and ABC has that are scientifically backed. So we'll get to some of those at the Q&A portion again. But Joanna, tell me about habitat at a community scale. Take it away.
Okay, will do. Sometimes have a momentary lapse on my mic, so I will basically build off what David and Kaitlyn presented to kind of take this to the next level in two ways. One, by thinking outside of migration to these sort of year-round things we can do, and also by thinking outside of our immediate spheres of influence, so outside of that home and property level. And I'm going to share some examples of how communities are supporting birds in some of these same ways. So first we'll talk about, there we go, what ABC and partners are working on with Bird City is really a collaborative approach to conservation. So it's very community-centered and locally led, and it kind of combines that local knowledge and priorities with more sort of global expertise. So I'll talk a little bit about Bird City just so you understand really what it is. But for inspiration, we really wanted to share some examples of how the communities in the network are achieving some of these solutions for birds. So the premise of Bird City is really this. People want to help birds and improve their communities, but often with so many issues and so many ways of going about things, it's hard to know where to start. So we often think of Bird City as a guide. So it is a community conservation, education, and recognition program that helps guide communities on what actions we really hope that they will take on. So Bird City is the program, and then we have community. So a Bird City community is one that has been recognized for the work that they are doing in these categories. Increasing habitat, as David talked about a lot, reducing threats, including but not limited to light and glass, engaging people in so many different ways. And also we have a sustainability category because of the big problems of climate. And it's also important to remember that when we do these things for birds, we're also doing them for other wildlife, and these communities are better and more healthy for people too. So at ABC, what we do is we coordinate the collaborative network of Bird City programs, and they are all working with their communities where they are. So they're independently owned and operated and working together through this collaborative that we've built. There's currently 9 US programs plus a program in Mexico and Colombia. And we are actively working with teams of partners to start programs in new states as well. And a map view too, for those of you who prefer that. And I know many of you will not see your location here. So 2 things on that. Hopefully it won't be too long. We are working to add new programs across the hemisphere. Perhaps you can help us make that happen. We'll share some contact information at the end. But also the second point is that the examples that we're going to show you will hopefully inspire you wherever you are, whether you have a Bird City program or not. So that's a bit about Bird City, and this is really the question that I will focus on. How can we specifically collaborate in communities to create safer spaces for birds? So we'll give some examples that hopefully will be inspiring, and we'll talk first about taking some of those habitat improvement ideas kind of to the next level, to the community level. And so where to start is often with education. On any issue, you need to educate yourself first, and then work to educate others. So kind of logical, but also an important thing to think about. Perhaps you have expertise to provide training or bring an expert into your community to educate people about something like native plants. A next step is to kind of look around for those opportunities. In the case of habitat, opportunities to protect or create or improve habitats. And once you've done a little bit of that strategic thinking about those opportunities, pick some projects, not too many, but pick some projects that you can begin to implement. So this is just an example of a boulevard area that has been modified with native plants, but not in a public space. So it might be invasive species removal, it might be planting or maintaining plantings like this. It might be cleanups or other things like that, stewardship projects like that. And then lastly, but not necessarily last, can do this concurrently, it's important to think about ways to improve policies. So in this case, the policies you might be looking at are those that your city, community, municipality has to support or not support native plants. So that's kind of just a general way to strategize on really any issue. And it'll come up again when we talk through light and glass, but sort of that education, assessment, pick some projects, and also think about policies. So again, we'll pick that up again with light and glass. But examples. So I'm going to show you some examples. There are thousands of actions that Bird City communities have taken, so it's a little bit hard, but I tried to grab a few examples that would resonate with you. So this is an example from one of our network programs, Bird Friendly Iowa, and what they suggest for their communities is to offer training and then encourage natural lawns with native plants. So the city of Ames completed that particular action by putting in systems to promote native lawns, and also they provide a financial incentive for completing some of these projects. So that's one example. Another helpful action is to work to influence your communities, like their plant list that they use in the municipality, and make sure it contains species that are good for birds. So this is an example in Galveston, Texas, where they completed this action for their Bird City, Texas designation. And their efforts to do that will end up helping dictate what is being planted in new developments. And Bird City, Maryland has a campus recognition component of their program. The University of Maryland at College Park is one of their newest recognized communities. And they're working on a really interesting project to adapt a habitat recognition tool that was created by their local Audubon. They're working in partnership to adapt that tool to be used on their campus. So that one's going to be interesting to watch and maybe a model for others as well. And then lastly, in terms of native plants, I want to just mention a little bit about policy. Oops, let me go back, sorry. Things are really changing on the policy level around native plants since this sort of framework was put together. And that's good. But in some places, people still are dealing with kind of the weed police when they plant natives. So have a look, and hopefully your community is on this sort of right end of the spectrum, the more supportive and actively promoting the use of native plants. And if not, this type of action might be one that you might want to take in your community to work to make those policies better and more supportive of native plants. Okay, so shifting from action on native plants to action on these separate but related issues that Kaitlyn teed up perfectly. The rough strategizing here is simple. The approach that I mentioned, first educate yourself and others about the issue by coming to things like this, searching through all of our extensive resources on this issue. ABC also provides really high-level training for professionals on this, as Kaitlyn mentioned, for architects, planners, project managers. Then you take that step to sort of assess what is happening in your community. Are there opportunities to modify existing buildings where you live that you know have issues, both in terms of glass and light, or like Kaitlyn mentioned, if there's a new construction project that's happening, find a way to find out what the approach is going to be. And then also, again, the policy angle. What are the policies that could be put in place so we aren't always chasing down problem buildings or lighting and fighting that sort of fix-it battle? Because really it is so much harder once a thing is built for either glass or light. So that policy is really, really important. Okay, so let's talk about some examples as we did before, but this time with light and glass. So with light pollution, a common action that communities are taking and that's being promoted through Bird City and other places is promoting lights out during migration. And I'm going to use a Texas example again because they have a particularly robust program in the state of Texas, and they're very effective at getting the word out about lights out. This is this is a very nice video that they've created, and I was kind of interested that in the video, which is just about 5 minutes or less, that you can find on Audubon Texas's website, but they mentioned a number of communities, and interestingly, most of those are recognized Bird City, Texas communities. So through Bird City, Texas, many communities are getting exposed to this approach to light pollution reduction and taking that action. Okay, and I also wanted to share a key policy action related to glass. So this one is out of Madison, Wisconsin, which is a recognized Bird City in Wisconsin's program. And it's really kind of, it's a pretty high level action. So Madison enacted an ordinance requiring bird-friendly construction. So just what Kaitlyn teed up, it's the exact kind of action that is going to make a difference long-term, because again, as we said earlier, by the time most of us see these building or lighting designs, it's really just too late to make changes oftentimes, or your changes are just much more limited. When you design it in, you have a lot more options. So that is an excellent action that now serves as an example to others. And in terms of that, we do have a lot of resources. ABC helped a ton with Madison and with many of these. And there's resources online, and also even as much as a sample ordinance that many of these worked from. So I'll leave that topic with this headline. First, I kind of put it in jest, but also seriously, because when we think about it, again, what is good for birds and other wildlife is also good for us. So I kind of liked that sentiment to end that section with. And then I'm going to round out the kind of community action by talking about simple, fun, and important actions around celebrating birds. So we partnered, ABC and Environment for the Americas partnered to help Bird City succeed by creating Bird City Network. You may know Environment for the Americas because they are the home of World Migratory Bird Day, which made them a very good fit as a partner for Bird City, because Bird City communities, most of them do an annual World Migratory Bird Day celebration. So the thing to know, just shorthand on World Migratory Bird Day, is that there is a new theme every year. This year, the theme is insects, and there are amazing resources available, many in multiple languages, for a community celebration anywhere. Again, the theme does change every year. There's been a lot of great ones. Last year focused on clean water, and the year before focused on light. And this is just a great way for communities to engage and educate and celebrate birds in their area. And these celebrations can vary in size and scope, from a community, maybe a family nature walk, to a speaker event, maybe a native plant sale or a native plant giveaway, or it can be extensive with many partners all coming and sharing pertinent information. So that can look a lot of ways, and you don't have to be a bird city to have a World Migratory Bird celebration. So maybe that's a good place to start at the community level. So there's a lot to talk about. We only touched a little bit of the surface, but there's many ways to get involved with Bird City. If you live where there is a program, consider getting your community designated as a Bird City. If you're already designated, maybe find out how you can join that effort. If not, you can still take action in your community. Many people do without the certification or designation program. If you are in a position where you're well connected and might want to help us start a program where you are, if there's not one, you can contact us through the website, and I'll give you our emails next as well. And of course, just support us in any way. If you want to get involved, or there's some other way that you think your work connects, please get in touch, either again through the website or through our emails. So thank you. Looking forward to questions.
That was wonderful, Joanna. Thank you so much. I'll welcome Kaitlyn and David back for our Q&A. I want to give a huge shout out to our really engaged audience. Thank you so much for all of your questions and interest. We'll try to get through as many as we can now, but again, more information will be shared with you afterwards and always on our website. But first up, I'm going to go to you, David. You are our first presenter. Folks have Zuganrua, that migratory restlessness, and they want to talk about when are the birds going to arrive. And most importantly, a lot of folks wrote in previously and during the presentation about their own observations and noticing the shifts in bird migration timing. So one of the questions we have is, from your perspective, how is that going for them, especially if they are arriving at different times from when native plants are blooming and insects are emerging? Can you speak to that timing?
Yeah, this is one of the very troubling aspects of climate change for migratory birds. Sort of the issue is that that a lot of insect populations are develop according to temperature. They, as the weather warms, for example, caterpillars and other insects become active and so forth. And those are the food for birds. So they're very much tied to the temperature. And as the climate warms and earlier in the year, they become more active earlier in the year. Birds, on the other hand, their migration is tied a lot to day length. And especially for birds that are long distance migrants who are in South America or Central America somewhere, they're not even aware of what the weather is here in the US or Canada. They migrate based on day length. And the day length doesn't change in relation to climate change, obviously. Day length is something that's completely independent. So the birds migrate at the same time they have been migrating previously, but the food sources are developing sooner. So there's this mismatch. The birds arrive maybe too late for food, or especially too late for their nestlings to get food, so that the food supply is late. This is a problem, and there isn't a really good solution. Obviously, climate change is, if whatever we can do to prevent or reduce climate change is important. There is fortunately a little bit of hope that birds have been adjusting their timing a little bit. This is probably an evolutionary adaptation that they're shifting to match the earlier timing as well. So there may be hope there, but it's an issue. Climate change is something we really need to address.
Absolutely. And it also is on us to make sure that they have that habitat and we bring it back so that they have those rest stops whenever they do get here. So that, again, there is that hope and ways for us to all participate and take action to help these birds as well. So thank you, David. Kaitlyn, the next one is for you. You mentioned about how most of the collisions happen around home, and so folks are wondering what type of birds are most affected by collisions. Are they birds that are backyard birds primarily? So can you talk about what families of birds are most at risk for collisions?
Sure. So every species of bird out there has probably hit a window at some point or another. I've seen hawks, I've seen owls, I've seen Virginia rails, but primarily, especially during migration, we're seeing those migratory songbirds. So there are a couple species that seem to be predisposed to hitting windows, white-throated sparrows, black and white warblers, so the sparrows, the warblers, the thrushes, the hummingbirds. And there are certain species within those families that seem to be more disproportionately vulnerable to collisions. And we're not really sure, is that because of the way they fly or their vision? But we do see a lot of those families colliding, a lot of American woodcocks colliding. And like I said, this happens primarily during migration. There's actually been a paper that came out a couple of years ago that showed that there was increased collision vulnerability from birds that use night flight calls a lot, and scientists speculate that that might actually be related to the artificial light that's attracting these birds into dangerous areas. And then during the winter, if you're on the West Coast, you might see a lot of varied thrush, and evening grosbeak is another species that collides in high rates, especially during the winter when they're eating from feeders in our backyards.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. So when we say bring habitat back, we mean the real thing, not just a reflection. Joanna, I need to pitch you a hard question. It's one that's super important, but very tense, and that's the outdoor cat topic. As you mentioned, outdoor cats are a community issue, especially when they are free roaming outside. They're the biggest threat to migratory birds in terms of a human-caused issue. And we got a lot of questions. So could you please speak to what people and communities can do to help reduce that threat and help birds during this time?
Yes, absolutely. It is a really hard one and a charged one, and people will automatically think like we don't like cats, but a lot of us have cats. We love cats. Many of them are walking across our keyboards all day. We want them to be safe, and we also want birds to be safe. So I think this group knows that cats that roam outdoors, whether they're owned or not owned, they really are a major threat. So there are things that we can do both. Again, this is an individual and a community issue. So individually, it's in our control to keep our cats indoors, or if outdoors, supervised with us on a leash. Or if you haven't discovered the amazing world of catios, that is something you should look up. People are building these truly amazing structures for their cats to be safe in, play in, and get an outdoor experience. So those are just a few of the things that each of us can do individually. And then on a community level, it's that it kind of goes back to that approach I mentioned, you're educating yourself about the issue. And one of the policy things you can do around cats is ensure good policy is in place there too. So you can work with officials to enact, or if you have good policy, to enforce that. But laws that require us to sort of treat cats much like we do dogs, requiring them to be in our control, and not roaming free. We don't allow dogs to do that, and we really should maybe be promoting thinking about cats that way too. So within Bird City, communities are taking action on this in those ways, requiring cats to be indoors, requiring cats not to be free roaming. So it is a hard one. It shouldn't be as hard as it is, but we just got to keep talking about it and keep trying to promote that attitude around cats as we do with other domestic animals.
Thanks, Joanna, especially because we want the cats to be safe too.
Precisely, yes. I've had some when ours have gotten out, we've had some, risky situations. It's quite scary, so.
This is a question posed for all of you, but Kaitlyn, I'm gonna ask you to reply first, because obviously we're presenting here. We want folks to join us in taking action to help birds bring habitat back. How do you even know that it's working? It's really nice to see results. And I think that with collisions and all the solutions you offered, I'd love for you to take it first.
Sure. I love working on bird window collisions because it is a solvable issue. We know what the problem is, we know what causes it, and we know what the solutions are. And we're seeing policies being enacted across the country more and more. There was a watershed moment when New York City did it. If you can do it in New York, you can do it everywhere. We're seeing more architects reaching out to us asking how to build bird-friendly buildings, incorporating wildlife friendly in with our definition of sustainability. So I love working on this issue because we know how to fix it and we can really see progress happening.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. Joanna or David, do you have anything to add? I'll admit I moved into a new home a couple years ago and kept hearing that awful heart-wrenching thud. And once I treated my windows, it stopped. So there is an immediate result that everyone can get by taking action for birds as well, which is really exciting. Thank you again to our really engaged audience. We so appreciate the questions. Our time is quickly coming to a close, so I have one more question for all of our presenters before we wrap up. But again, we'll be sending lots of information to all of you, and it's on our website. But for our presenters, in order of speakers, I'd like to know, what is one thing that you hope everyone takes away from this webinar and shares with a friend? So David, would you kick things off, please?
Yeah, I was talking about habitat and native plants and diversity of structure, and that's what I'd like for people to take home. If you have a yard or a farm or another area that you manage, native plants are so important. They provide food, they provide shelter, and different different types and categories of plants. So flowers and shrubs and trees all are good, very good for birds.
Thanks, David. And Kaitlyn.
Yeah, I really hope that the next time someone remarks, "Oh, these birds keep hitting my windows," that you all will take away that and let them know that there's some really simple, easy solutions, that it's preventable, and that they're changing their windows and treating their windows can really make a difference.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. And Joanna.
Yeah, I would say that message about starting where you are. Take some action within the sphere of influence that you have. Don't worry about solving these issues for the whole world. Start where you are, because what you learn about taking on some of these issues at your own home, then you're much better able to go to your community leaders and get resolution.
Thanks so much, Joanna. With that, we'll now end the webinar. Thank you so much again for joining us. All the registrants will receive a link to the recording via email in just a few days. I hope you enjoyed the presentations and consider supporting ABC in honor of Arbor Day with a special gift to support our mission. You'll help us reach over $50,000, our match goal, and for every $20 or more, you'll get to plant 2 trees in priority bird habitat in your name or the name of a loved one. Please visit abcbirds.org/Arbor Day to make your gift now. Thank you so much for caring about birds, and good birding this spring.